Now, Tim, you are doubtless aware that my birthday is very fast approaching. You always make such a song and dance about my birthday and phone me up, and you really make me feel special when the time comes.
Really?
No, never.
Well, yeah. I always remember it.
Yeah, you always remember it within like a month or two either side of it.
Yeah. When it's that same date on a different month, I go, oh, that's a coincidence.
So how's this an idea for a podcast? It's an annual podcast. It's only recorded once a year, and it's called Brady's Birthday Presents.
Okay.
And now what the idea is that we get all the listeners, you know, I would hope in the tens of thousands of people, to all send me a present. And then for the podcast, I open them and like discuss my favorites.
Yeah.
Not cheap tatty ones. I'm talking nice stuff, you know, like watches and iPhones and
Yeah.
And I like review them and talk about the creative things that people sent me from all around the world.
Not only is this a good idea, I wish I'd had this idea. Why isn't it my birthday?
Well, you've missed your birthday. That was back in April. Like a lot of people might be thinking, oh, this is just some idea for Brady to get lots of cool presents.
No.
Some cynics may think so.
Man.
So my idea is if there are any presents like that I don't like or I get two of or are just things that I don't think suit my house, I give those ones to charity.
No, not to me, to charity.
I want to be seen, like at least I want the appearance of like, you know, like a good cause and generosity, because I think that might make people send me even better presents.
Well, and if they send multiple, then they know one of them will go to charity.
Yeah, like if you send me 2 Rolexes, I might give one of them to charity.
There's a better chance of one of them ending up in charity than if you only sent one. Put it that way.
I think we should pilot this, Tim. I think we should actually make one.
It's definitely worth piloting. There is nothing to lose from piloting this idea.
Exactly. And it helps charities.
It may help charities.
Depends. Only if you send, like, not very good stuff.
Or multiple good stuff. I think you may have a conflict of interest in regards to this podcast idea.
I mean, if it's really successful, we could also have a Christmas edition where people send me Christmas presents.
Well, hang on a sec. I feel like we may be forgetting something. All jokes aside, there is an idea in this, like a birthday card idea.
Will there be money in the cards?
Man, you're devaluing the heartfelt messages that the listeners may want to convey to you on your birthday.
My grandmother used to send me a birthday card every year with a $10 note in it.
Oh, yeah.
And that was the only time I would ever get like a note as big as a 10. And the excitement of opening that and seeing that green paper 10. It was back when we had the green paper 10s.
Yeah.
That was just like pure greed and excitement, seeing a $10 note in a card. I probably read the message from my grandmother, I don't know, but seeing that $10 note.
Do you remember that scene? I think it's in Family Ties when Alex just lifts up the cards upside, doesn't even read them, just opens them out face down to see if anything falls out and then puts them aside and just goes through them systematically.
He has a technique to flick them, and if no money comes out when you flick it, you just toss it in the bin.
Okay, I'm going to show you how to get through this pile of cards in minutes. Take your letter opener. You take your card, give it a clean slit along the top, like this. Give it one of these. Quick snap of the wrist. No money comes out. In the trash.
Who's going first with real ideas?
Yeah. Look, I've got something just to bring us back to the higher and more sensible level that this podcast usually works on. I do have an idea.
Right.
I'm denied about this because it does have a visual element involved in it, but I think it's a fun visual element. The podcast is called A Face. Now, I've been fascinated by the idea of how much you can tell about a person just by looking at their face. Like, I'm one of those people, I love to sit at a cafe and just watch people walking past and you just see them and it's enjoyable and you wonder about them and their lives. And I'm just wondering, like a face, how much can you tell from a face? So is there a podcast idea in terms of like Googling a face, images, and choosing, a face at random, putting it on and basically then having a conversation about the face? What can we tell about this person? What is their name? And you think of a name that suits them. What is their job? What is their age? Which country, what nationality? But then you even start going, like, what's the backstory with this person? And then their personality. Are they an introvert or an extrovert? And you have a conversation about a random person's face.
So you just make up a story based on a first impression?
Well, no, see, it's a bit of a contested idea because it's like it's Sally and you go, no, that doesn't look like a Sally. That's a Barry. No, no.
I see that you're not like necessarily agreeing, but together you're kind of coming to a consensus or a disagreement. But together you're trying to come up with an identity for a person, knowing nothing except what they look like.
You could choose someone who you do know the backstory of, either because they're an obscure person but relatively famous, like the FBI director in 1962 or something like that, or...
Wouldn't that be J. Edgar Hoover?
Isn't that what's his name? No. You know what I mean? Someone that you can find off an obscure scientist or an obscure film star or someone like that.
Yeah.
Or someone that you happen to know, or someone can send in their face with a photo of their face with a whole bunch of information about them. You know what I mean? Like one person, the two people can talk about it, but a third person or one of the person guesses and talks about the person, but another person, there's a bit of a reveal at the end. Or they open an envelope and read at the end, all the details.
Or you pan out and they're like in a wheelchair, or they're standing on top of Mount Everest, or they're wearing a soccer uniform and they're a world famous soccer player or something like that.
Oh yeah, there could be more information in it that way.
You pull out to reveal context.
You could do it that way. Yeah. I mean, the idea, you get the idea, don't you? It's like, who is this person?
I get the idea. What are you... not that you have to achieve something, but what are you potentially achieving here? Are you saying something about how people make judgment calls and stereotypes based on people's appearance, or is it just the fun of making up a story, or... Like, is there a higher purpose, or is it just...
There's not a higher purpose or a moral purpose or anything. All those things might be nice byproducts. It's more derived from the interest in the difference between the way what you might think about a person by looking at their face and what is actually there. Like, you might find yourself... I found myself in a work situation or some kind of situation where you're in a meeting with people for a long period of time across the table from someone, and you don't really know anything about them, and so you're just wondering about them. Or you're doing public speaking and your eye forever catches one person who looks like they're frowning. And even while you're giving your public speaking address, you're wondering, is that person angry, or is that person just concentrating? What is with that person? Are they disagreeing with what I'm saying, or are they agreeing? So there's something around you trying to read people. And like, I did a bit of a very, very brief search, and there is a little bit of psychology around people's faces and what you can tell about them from their face. I mean, there's some obvious things you can tell, which is not that interesting. You can often, mostly tell the gender, and you can pitch the age a little bit and all that kind of stuff. And there's nationalities, but it's more beyond that. I'm trying to find out, is this a person who gets angry often? This person looks angry, or is that just the face they have and they're actually an incredibly charming person? So I find it fascinating, and it's hard to work out how to get to know that. Like in real life, you actually get to know the person. You're like, oh, wow, that first impression was, really quite different.
I was at this dinner one time, Tim, at it was like a science event or conference I was at, and just a few people went out to dinner like the night before. There was probably 10 people at the table, and sitting opposite me was like this, just like basically an old man with a foreign accent.
Yeah.
I didn't think much of him, just that he was some old dude, probably some old scientist. And about halfway through the dinner, the person next to me leaned over and said, "Do you know who that is opposite you?" And I said, "Oh, no, I don't." And they told me like his name, and then said he's a Nobel Prize winner. He won the Nobel Prize in chemistry.
Wow.
And suddenly I looked at him differently and thought, yeah, he's got something, that guy. Like, he's got this like authority and aura about him that only a Nobel Prize winner could have. And before that, he was just some old dude. It was only when I knew he won the Nobel Prize that I looked at him and thought, yeah, you've got that thing that only Nobel Prize winners have.
Yeah.
And it made me realize that. Well, you know what it made me realise? That I had no idea.
Well, you're projecting it onto them, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly.
So I guess I'm interested in what you project onto a blank face. Like, for instance, you find a person who looks kind of maybe awkward and a little bit nerdy or something like that, and you might make those judgments about that person. But then if you happen to see them in, like Q magazine, like a rock magazine, and they happen to have the coolest new album this week, and you're like, oh, they look so cool. Like, that quirky awkwardness is actually a total, it's a slanting alternative kind of look, and the whole context around it.
I think there would be a message of this podcast that people aren't what they seem. Like, that would definitely be the thing you would take away from it. You were first, because I reckon 99 times out of 100 people are going to get it wrong and go completely down the wrong path with each person. So it would be a takeaway that when you first see someone, you shouldn't judge them. You don't know who they are or what their story is.
Yeah, you can't judge a book by its cover. But that's I wouldn't want the podcast to be overly guided by that, or else it would forever being, well, I know this person looks a bit rugged, but they're actually got a heart of gold or something. Like that would become a bit ordinary after a while, even though that's...
There would be occasional episodes where it'd be really exciting, though, and you got exactly right who they are and what they do and stuff. It'd be like, oh, wow, you really nailed that one. I mean, the fundamental weakness of this, which you identified at the start, is you have to see the person's face to be enjoying the podcast.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times when you listen to podcasts, you might not want to be calling up a webpage and looking at a face and things like that. I mean, maybe you could change your podcast cover art to be the face, but then what would that mean for old episodes?
Yeah.
The problem is the visual element, as you identified, but you could probably get around that.
That's right. You could change it each time.
But when you're out, on a long drive or on a run, you don't want to have to be faffing about on your phone to look at something. Like whenever you have to see something, it is a slight pain in the butt, but I don't think it's insurmountable. And I do think it would work as a podcast.
Just some quick trivia then. I Googled face and then clicked images. Who's the first image that came up?
Well, obviously, the way Google works now, it's different for everyone. But I thought maybe the Mona Lisa?
No, Obama.
Oh, right.
Obama. Do you know who else was on the first line? Alfred E. Newman from Mad magazine.
Oh, yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Let me Google face on... Oops. It just auto-filled out to Facebook. Face. Oh, you see, mine's just stock images of faces from stock sites.
It's funny when you look on... You mentioned Facebook, and you're looking for someone... you're wondering about someone you haven't seen for a long time, or you're wondering about someone that you've met and you go looking for them. Like I was at a conference the other day and I was like, oh, so-and-so, look up. And so you find all these people with the same name as that person, and they all have lives and they all look totally different and they're different ages, and it's so fascinating.
And you feel like they've stolen your friend's identity. Like, you can't be walking around calling yourself Tim Hine.
That's right. Who are these people? Pretenders.
Do you know what a good episode of your face podcast would be? To do like, welcome to episode 19. I've got a face for you today, Tim, and you look at it and you speculate on the person and who they are and what they might be. And then I reveal it's like someone from your childhood, like it was your best friend in primary school. And they're all grown up and you didn't recognise them.
Yeah.
How cool an episode would that be? It was someone you knew all along.
Yeah, that would be clever. I have a face that people like. I have deep set eyes, and I don't have very good vision. I obviously wear glasses, well, although that wouldn't be obvious to anyone who's listening. But anyway, I do wear glasses.
You do sound like a guy who wears glasses.
So I often, I squint a lot, although I shouldn't with wearing my glasses, but I still have to. And so I think people think that I'm frowning a lot, and I've had that feedback, like, what's wrong? You look concerned. Like I'll be just walking along and I'll be looking, and I'm just like, I'm good. I'm all good. And so...
You do have deep set eyes. I always, because you know how glasses makes it look like your eyes are like where your glasses are, basically. So they're at the front of your face. Yeah. Whenever you take your glasses off, I am always freaked out by how far back your eyes are.
It's like a good half a foot back.
They're like set in the back of your head.
That's the only reason I wear glasses, is to sort of balance out the illusion. You can't go around with this face. Put something in there. They're not corrective. They just create the optical illusion that my eyes are in a proportionate area. I read an article once that talked about how Bill Clinton was a master politician in the way he was able to convey interest in people. He, because he looks right, at them and gives them a great sense of feeling their attention. But the person also noted, somewhat cynically, they were talking about how he's mastered the art of when he's looking at something like, hey, President, look at our factory here, or look at this school children's project, or what, you do so much of when you're a politician, that he looked with his, not with his mouth closed, but with his mouth like just slightly apart. And the person said that the psychology of that is that you look interested, like you almost could go, oh, wow. You're not sort of, you'd be overacting if your mouth was wide open. But to have your mouth closed, you're more likely to look disinterested, even though you might be quite interested. So having your mouth slightly apart has that look of, oh wow. And so that he just did that all the time. And it's one of those sort of political sort of skills. And they were writing about that, about him.
If a stranger looked at your face, what do you think they would think about you?
Well, apart from what I've already said, that people tend to see frowning. But I guess if I'm, I don't know. I don't know what they would think. It's hard to know. What about you? Have you had any feedback along those lines?
No. I mean, a lot of people would assume I'm a model, obviously.
Well, apart from... What if they weren't looking at like your professional glamour pics that you've had done? What if they were just looking at like...
I don't like to talk about those professional.
Like, I'm not talking about your rippling body muscles or anything. This is just like from the neck up.
Right. Oh, you mean my face? Because obviously, yeah, I do a lot of torso and chest modelling.
But the tats would give it away. So without the tats or anything...
I don't know. No, I don't think I look like anything.
It's impossible to think about yourself, isn't it? But you can certainly invent a story looking at someone else.
Yeah.
Anyway, there we go. A face. Doesn't involve people sending me presents.
No.
But it's not a bad idea.
Hey everyone, I want to tell you about today's sponsor, Brilliant. But before I do, I want to clarify something you might not realise. And that's the fact you can go to the Brilliant website right now and check out loads of the good stuff for free. And I don't think everyone realises that. Okay, now, so what's Brilliant? Well, it's a learning website filled with what you might call guided problem courses. They're all interactive, elegantly designed, and I think this is the most important part, really enjoyable. There's a sense of fun about the whole site. This isn't like the drudgery of schoolwork, it's more like cool puzzles that you just do for the pleasure of it. The courses are lovingly made by people who really care. They cover topics from mathematics through to solar energy. Brilliant uses 8 principles of learning to guide their work, and top of that list, number 1, is that their courses are designed to excite you. Excitement. They say, and I'm inclined to agree, that the greatest challenges to education are disinterest and apathy. If you'd like to check them out and see how they're doing it, go to brilliant.org/unmade. That'll tell them you came from here, and it'll also snag you 20% off Brilliant's premium membership. That's like the deluxe version with access to absolutely everything. But remember, you can also go and check out all their free stuff. The address again, brilliant.org/unmade. I guess it's my turn now.
Go for it, man. What do you got?
I was listening to some songs by Garth Brooks the other day, who's a musician that both you and I have a soft spot for. And it gave me my idea for a podcast. This is what the podcast is called. It's called Unanswered Prayers. And each week, someone comes on the show and talks about something that they really wanted in their life, and they didn't get it.
Yeah.
And they're glad they didn't get it, and it turned out for the best.
Yeah.
Because for people who don't know, the song Unanswered Prayers is about a guy who goes to a football game with his wife, and he bumps into an old high school flame who he used to really, really wish he could get together with.
Just the other night, at a hometown football game, my wife and I ran into my old high school flame.
And when he meets her in this sort of grown-up time, he realises that she wasn't quite what he thought.
She wasn't quite the angel that I remembered in my dreams.
And they don't really get along that well, and he looks at his wife full of love, and he's so glad he ended up with his wife. The moral of the song is, I'm thankful to God that my prayer, because each night he used to pray that he could get this girl, and he's really glad that God didn't answer his prayer.
Some of God's greatest gifts are unanswered prayers.
So obviously my podcast isn't about necessarily people who pray or ask God for things. It's just for people who want things and desire things or try to get things in their life. They fail, and then they realise it was for the best that they didn't get it.
I reckon it would be quicker to explain it if you sang the song.
The final line of the song is, some of God's greatest gifts are unanswered prayers.
That's right.
This is not a religious podcast, I'm suggesting, or about people who pray or about God. Although that's not precluded. People who have a religious belief may pray for the things they want. But if you're not religious, you could just really want something and you don't get it. And then maybe soon after, or maybe years later, you realise that was actually quite a good result for me that I didn't get it. Do you have anything that fulfills this requirement, Tim? This kind of unanswered prayer, something you wanted and didn't get, and you look back now and think, actually, that was probably for the best?
Yeah, look, I don't know. I mean, look, there's so much in this. This is a brilliant idea, by the way. And can I just say, I've got another Garth-related idea that I was going to use. I wasn't going to use it tonight, but I've got it on the list and I'm waiting for the right time, and I'll put it off a little bit now.
All right.
Because
I think... Put it back a bit. I've got another Garth one as well.
Garth gives us so much.
Country music is pretty good for thought-provoking stuff, isn't it? My pet dog died and my car broke down, and they're always about very lifey things, aren't they? So,
well, I can hear a podcast called Pet Dog Died, and people call and talk about their pets that died. that's actually...
That is on my list, so don't ruin it. That's one of my ideas.
And... My car broke down. That's less interesting. Unless it's your first car. We've already done that.
Come on, unanswered prayers. What's your unanswered prayer?
Unanswered prayer. I've got to think about this. Come on, you have to go first because you've been thinking about it because it's your idea.
I do have one because I worked for the BBC in Nottingham for a long time. And then I went on a 1-year secondment or an attachment, as the BBC calls it, to Birmingham. And I worked in Birmingham for a year on a TV video project. And at the end of that year, I'd quite liked my time in Birmingham. And I thought, things were moving forward for me. And if I went back to Nottingham, things might stagnate a bit. So I applied for this job that they'd advertised in Birmingham involving videos and training and things like that. And I went through the interview process and got to the final interview. And I didn't get the job. I was disappointed. I thought, I'm a good candidate. But they didn't pick me. I was a bit put out like you are when you don't get a job. I went back to Nottingham. And within a few weeks, different things had happened. And I ended up doing this side project with the University of Nottingham involving videos. And then I moved over to YouTube and things happen. And my whole YouTube career started because I went back to Nottingham, and that would never have happened if I'd got the Birmingham job.
Wow.
And I think if I had got that Birmingham job, I would never have started making YouTube videos.
Wow.
Which has become such a huge part of my life in so many ways. I would never have started making podcasts, and I think my career has been for the better because of all the things that involve YouTube and podcasts and things like that. It would never have happened if I'd gotten that job I really wanted in Birmingham. I really wanted to get it because I wanted to stay, and I didn't get to.
There you go. See, that's fascinating, isn't it? You could call this sliding doors. There's a little bit of that in it.
It is a bit. Of course, unless you are really, really unhappy in your life, you will look back at everything that you didn't get and think it was for the best.
Yeah.
Because it's got you to where you are now. There is a degree of that. But, I think it's good to choose one or two big things like the high school flame or the job you didn't get or the house you didn't get to buy, things like that. I think those big moments are quite fun to look at. It is very sliding doors as well, yes.
There's an idea there for a spin-off idea called Answered Prayers, where you think about the things that you've got and you wish you hadn't. They've taken you down the wrong track. Here I am in this job and I'm stuck here. And that would be a more depressing one, but in some ways a funnier one to talk about the house. I bought this house and it's a total, or the car, it's a total lemon. All I wanted was this car. I got it and it's a total lemon. It's fallen apart, this house. You're wanting one out of me, and I'm trying to think about it because I feel like I've got everything I've ever wanted. And
you're living the dream, Tim. You're living the dream.
All the prayers have been answered.
Everything you could ever want. You've never not got anything you wanted. Did you apply for anything at university you didn't get into? Or did you get your first choice at university?
I got into my first choice.
You're living the dream, Tim. You're living the dream.
Then I dropped out and changed to another course that I wanted to and got into that.
And then I got a wonderful wife and a lovely family. And well, you'd be terrible on the podcast.
I'm a terrible guest.
Fair enough. I mean, it's something that sometimes requires a bit of thought as well. So
yeah.
Anyway, like I said, I think unless someone is like some miracle worker, everyone has wanted things they didn't get. So I think everyone can tell the story. It's just, sometimes you can't quite so easily draw the dots about how it turned out for the best. Whereas me, like a month or two later, my whole YouTube career started because I didn't get that job.
I'll tell you, there's another parallel idea, which is another spin-off idea, which is unanswered prayers that you're really frustrated they weren't answered. This is the more common scenario. Like, I look back and I go, oh, geez, I'd like to, let's say, really practice the guitar hard, you know what I mean? And be a really great guitar player and be in a rock band. And I still wish that had happened.
Yeah. Well, yeah, things you're still praying for.
That's right, unanswered prayers that you're really frustrated by. But I think this is good. Were you thinking about Garth and then you thought of this idea, or were you thinking...
I was out on a run and I was literally listening to that song when I thought, this would be a good podcast.
Was it the live version where the audience takes over, or was it the studio version?
It was, yeah. It was on double live, yeah.
Sometimes I thank God for
That's a good album. Nice.
Just one quick question about that Garth Brooks double live album, because I like Garth Brooks, and we know you do, right?
Yeah.
So I don't want to besmirch him, but he is kind of a bit of a control freak, I think.
Yeah.
Do you think Double Live was all recorded live at concerts, or it was like some of it was recorded in studios and made to seem live?
Oh, no, totally.
Because it's very well recorded.
Yeah. No, there's definitely what we call overdubs. I would say definitely. And many, many albums are done that way. many live albums are touched up, even with a little guitar bit here or a vocal. And sometimes you can really tell. Yeah, I mean, the worst ones are, a studio recording with an audience in the background or screaming or so forth. But, I mean, they're getting better in terms of, live recording is getting a heck of a lot better. And most artists record most shows digitally and really, really well. Pearl Jam release a recording of every single show, like within a few hours of the show finishing online. Or they did that for several years. So there's hundreds and hundreds. They had 20 albums in the top 100 of America at one stage because they just were all out there, and you can download them, and so lots of them are recorded and they sound really, really great. But I'd be surprised if there wasn't something that was touched up on it.
You keep talking about that, and I'm just going to nip off and get a drink. I'm joking.
Garth is well. Firstly, it's recorded over several live shows. So there's two types of live albums. One is that's one show, right? There we go. The other sort is where they've got a great performance from a whole bunch of them and put them together. Like Midnight Oil have an album called Scream in Blue, and it's from a few different shows put together. But I probably all the better for it.
Well, my unanswered prayer right now is wishing I hadn't asked you that question.
You're going to cut that whole bit out of the final recording, I can tell.
All right, we'll release that as like a limited edition content.
Unanswered prayers. Yeah, I think that's a go. I think that's really interesting, and I think people would love it.
You're going to sing us a line to see us out?
No.
Some of God's greatest gifts are unanswered prayers.
All right, what's your next idea?
There's a podcast here called Plausible. The premise of this podcast is it plausible that this happened? And I guess the context I'm thinking about it is in terms of a film. I watched Jurassic Park again the other night, right?
Yeah.
Now, I could stop here and say, is it plausible? But I want to push in even more specifically. Towards the end of Jurassic Park, when everything goes crazy, I'm going to presume everyone's seen this film.
The original Jurassic Park, this is. The good one.
1993. You know how the place is packed full of people? Like there are scientists working in the laboratories, and there are all sorts of guards and everything. But by the end of the film, you're focused in on those few main characters, apart from the lawyer who's, the blood-sucking lawyer who gets eaten by the T-Rex. You're focusing on these characters so much, and they run and they get to the helicopter and they take off in the helicopter and get away, and that's a lovely end of the story when they're flying over the ocean. And I suddenly thought, what about all the other people? Where are they? And so I was just thinking, this isn't plausible. Suddenly it all fell apart, and Jurassic Park has felt plausible for a long time.
I don't want to pour cold water on your idea straight away here, Tim, but they deal with that in the film.
How?
They evacuate the island because the storm is coming early in the film. There's an evacuation.
You don't mean to the boat that Nedry's getting to?
Yeah, everyone is told to leave the island because this big cyclone or whatever's coming.
So everyone leaves the island except for the one, like all the security guards go. They get rid of the security guards even though they're having trouble.
I think so. Although, if that's the case, why don't the other people leave? Is it because they break down on their tour? I think they evacuate the island.
They evacuate everyone except that one security guy with the gun.
Yeah, and Samuel L. Jackson.
And
I don't know. I could be wrong about that. I don't know. Yeah, it's interesting.
It's not plausible. It's not plausible.
Okay. Yeah, well, it's not plausible you'd eevacuate a whole island full of dinosaurs anyway in the first place. So.
Don't evacuate the dinosaurs. They evacuate the people.
No. I've got a plausibility issue with the film that I think I wrote down on my Unmade podcast list. I was going to use it to get into films in a different way, but it sort of fits your idea, so I'll bring it out now.
Whip it out.
Is it plausible that Captain Von Trapp in The Sound of Music
love this film.
would turn from being such a hard ass to such a softie so quickly? Because he's like, you know how he's hard and really difficult and and then just in like the space of 3 seconds when he sees the kid singing, he suddenly goes, oh, I'm not going to be a hard ass anymore. I'm going to be a big softie and sing songs with all of you guys. He turns too easily. I'm okay with his arc of going from a hard ass to a nice guy and rediscovering his happiness, but he does it too easily.
I don't know. There's a couple of times when they sing when that happens though. Like it's when they come back and they're all wet and he says you're going inside and they try and say they were collecting blueberries and all that stuff. And he sacks her and then goes inside and he's like really moved and then has her back. So there's that that scene in itself feels plausible.
I just think he turns too easily.
The one thing that's caught me about this film, and I do love this film.
Me too.
I do love it. And I love the love scene at the end. Like, I just love, you know what I mean? Like, you can't...
What love scene? Is this from an uncut version? What's the love scene?
It's a love scene, man. Where he says you can't be with someone else, be with someone when you're in love with someone else, and his head turns. And I think that's really beautiful. I think it's one of the truly romantic moments in Hollywood, to be honest.
Is that when he's talking to the other woman he was going to be with?
No. He says the Countess or whatever. He gets rid of her, right? And then he goes for
gets rid of her.
Not in a Pulp Fiction get rid of. He doesn't take care of her. No, she just leaves, right? But then he goes walking in the garden and he goes up to the little gazebo.
To be fair to the Countess, though, she's very gracious about it. She's a classy lady the way she handles that.
Oh, yeah, but she sort of covers...
She sees it and walks away, doesn't she, in a way?
She doesn't let him say it. Her pride doesn't let her say it. She goes, on the other hand, I don't know if you're quite the man for me, and, it's no use. And that's all he has to say is, it's no use. And she's like, oh, she's out of there. Anyway, I think there is a plausibility issue. I do buy that he kind of falls for her. The bit I don't buy is his timeline of the story, because when they're in love and everything and they're just chatting, he says, do you know when I first fell in love with you or started loving you? And she goes, when? And he says, when you sat on that stupid pine cone at dinner. And it's like, no, you didn't. That's too far back. She was new and you were annoyed with it.
He was just annoyed by her then.
I think he's rewriting history there. I don't think that's true.
He's just trying to keep in the good books. He's a smart man. I really did like those dresses you made out of curtains. I thought they were really nice, no matter what anyone says.
That's right.
I like the idea of your plausibility idea, Tim. I wouldn't want it to turn into plot holes and consistency mistakes, because there's a whole industry of that.
Oh yeah.
But I do like the idea better of just this isn't a plot hole. It's just it doesn't seem like something someone would do. The motivation seems wrong to me.
Yeah. That's a better conversation, isn't it? Than there are lots of those. You're talking about those consistency things where someone's wearing a wristwatch in one scene and then they're not in a next one, or their cigarettes longer and shorter.
Yeah.
And there are whole people employed on films, aren't they, to make sure that those things are consistent. And sometimes they get it wrong. So there's a good conversation in this podcast, because you're thinking about the character and the decisions that they've made. Why do they do that and not that? It doesn't seem right. That's a fair critique, because that's the writer's job. And if it doesn't seem plausible, then...
If you stop and start talking to the person you're watching the film with about it, saying, they wouldn't do that, would they? I think you've made maybe a mistake.
I remember years ago, you and I were watching Beverly Hills 90210, right? And this was a long time ago. There was a scene where Mrs. Walsh, Brandon's mum, and Brenda's mum, and she was on the phone in the kitchen. They're all sort of talking and stuff, right? And then Brenda asks her mum a question, and the mum politely sort of just answers her, just goes, blah, 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 oh, sure, Brenda, just do that. And I remember mentioning to you going, that doesn't happen in real life. That's not plausible. You're like, why not? And you go, because the mum would go, shh, I'm on the phone. That's what a real mum would do. Do you know what I mean? They wouldn't even...
90210 was ruined from that point onwards.
But even the fact that she was facing them talking on the phone, she would have turned... Because when you're on the phone, you turn your back on where the noise and the conversation is to hear clearly, or walk to the other side. But she's not. She's standing there like she's in the huddle with them on the phone, and they're talking, and she answers a question. You're like, shh, I'm on the phone. That's not plausible. And... yeah, that's where 90210 I think.
Do you think it's plausible that all the people as cool as they are in 90210 would be friends with Andrea?
Well, they're not all friends with her. It's just Brandon connects with her. He's a nice guy over the journalist thing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, okay.
It's not just because she's 40.
They're all 40.
Garth Brooks, The Sound of Music, 90210. We're doing our pop culture.
We're giving away a lot of guilty pleasures today.
Anyway, so plausible. I think there's a conversation in there, and I think it's a fun thing to talk about. And I think people listening will be thinking of their own examples right now.
Oh, well, I hope they're writing some of them in the Reddit for us.
Absolutely. Yeah, that'd be cool.
You want another idea from me to...
No, I think I'm done. No.
Yeah. Just kidding. I only like listening to my own ideas.
Can you just edit me in later on saying I like it or something?
Just Tim, just say, good idea a few times and I'll edit them in later on
right.
as I do my idea on my own. That would be an amazing revelation for people if it was revealed that you and I record these like on separate days and I really cleverly just put them together so it sounds like we're having a conversation.
Yeah. People are staggered enough when they find out that you're in London and that I'm in Adelaide. They just find that unbelievable.
I'm not in London. Why does everyone in Australia think people in England are automatically in London? There are other places in England that aren't London.
Okay, I'm using
Much
it as the
nicer
generic
places.
term. That's fair enough. You are in the UK.
How's Sydney today, by the way, Tim?
That's right. That's it. Hang on. Oh, my koala's just walked in. Out, fella. There we go. That's it. Oh, now the kangaroos come in. Hang on. Where's my Fosters? Hang on, man.
Just play your didgeridoo at them and that'll scare them off.
That's right. Yeah. No. Okay. So, yeah, they find that amazing. So that would be funny if you edit it together. What if one of us didn't exist at all? Like it was an imaginary conversation with a computer-generated voice.
Which one of us is more likely to be computer generated? If you were listening to you and I talk, which person would you think if one of them had to be a bot?
Oh, geez, that's hard.
I think people would probably think me because I have so much intellect and knowledge. People would think it could only be an artificial intelligence. Like they'd be thinking, no human can know that much stuff. That's what gives me away. He's so knowledgeable. He must be connected to the internet.
He must be. You're just spewing out. But would you choose that voice? It's an unusual voice to have chosen.
Why did the artificial intelligence choose that nasal, twangy...
I mean, what if neither of us exist? What if Garth Brooks has just dreamed us up to help promote his double live album?
And he waited till this episode to drop the bomb.
Yeah. It turns out we've been establishing credibility for all these episodes until now we've smuggled.
2 links in the show notes to the double live album, people.
Yeah, I hear he has a marketing degree. This is a new form of marketing.
Maybe the whole world exists as a simulation to sell double live albums. He created the earth just so he could sell his albums.
But who is he selling them to?
In the beginning, there was nothing, and Garth wanted to sell albums, so he said, let there be an earth full of money and people.
I would love it if the beginning of time was basically like there was nothing, and then like Garth just...
There was just a big warehouse of double live albums.
I would love it if the beginning of all creation in the universe was like the beginning of a Garth concert, like where it's just... dark and nothingness, and then suddenly he shoots out of the stage into the air. And there was life. Boom!
AKA the Big Bang.
That's right, the Big Bang.
I think we're getting a bit ridiculous now. So here's my final idea. Like all ideas, this is one I've kind of expanded, but I'm going to shrink it back to the original idea and keep it tight.
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure what name I'm going to give it. I'm going to give it the working title, 1 Star. And in this podcast, Tim and I will travel to places on TripAdvisor that have only been given 1 star in the reviews and have really, really bad reviews and go and record podcasts at those places.
That is a good idea.
So this was inspired by my brother-in-law, and he was telling us about this absolute nightmare kind of holiday village he stayed at, which is actually really close to my house. It's only like about 20 minutes from where I live. And he was telling me it was terrible. And he said it was so bad I had to write a TripAdvisor review. I read the review, which was absolutely hilarious because he's quite a funny guy, and he condemned it in quite funny terms. And then I just started scrolling through the rest of the reviews, and they were all like that. It was just terrible review after terrible review.
Wow.
All of them just getting that 1 circle or star that you get on TripAdvisor.
Yeah.
I thought, how does a place stay open getting so many bad reviews? And like, it was so funny hearing him talk about how terrible the place was. Like, you couldn't make up the stuff.
Yeah.
And it made me think there must be a bunch of these on TripAdvisor. How funny as a podcast would it be for like just 2 people like you and I trying, who think we're funny sometimes, to go with a handheld recorder, go to those places, stay there for a couple of nights and just record our experience.
Oh, that would be fantastic. I actually want to do that. That's a lot of fun.
You know that I'm trying to get you to come over to the UK to record some podcasts here soon. Top of my list for things for us to do is to go and stay at this place.
Wow, man. I'm slightly less enthusiastic now.
In fact, that's where I'm going to put you for the whole couple of weeks you're here, and I'm going to stay here in my house.
I mean, it's a good idea in theory. I didn't mean you actually have to go there.
I think that would be fun. So going and reviewing places that you know are going to be absolutely awful. Obviously, the expansion of this idea, 1 star, is to also review films that got 1 star, go to theatre shows that get 1 star, buy products from Amazon that are averaging 1 star, and review the products. You know, you could expand it out. But I like the idea of going to places that have been given 1 star and just experiencing the terribleness.
Was there any sort of redemptive charm in the end? Like, does he, after your brother-in-law had talked about it for a while, did he sort of go, but in the end, I kind of came to like its rugged, weird charm? Or
I think they were supposed to stay there for 4 or 5 nights, and after one night, they booked a cottage somewhere else.
Oh, really?
It was pretty awful.
Oh, man.
But we will find out when you come over and we go and stay there for our...
We'll go stay at that specific place. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
And we'll give it a description. He's like, okay, I'm in the bathroom and I'm looking at 2 cockroaches. Or yeah, that's a good idea.
Apparently there's like some fenced off trampoline that you've got to pay £2 to go and bounce on for a couple of minutes and things like that.
Oh, that's incredible. I heard about people who stay at a place near the beach in a town where you have to put coins in so the electricity works.
Oh, yeah, I think, I've know places like that.
Oh, really? You've got like a long row of coins you've got to put in, or else the air conditioning, stops and everything stops, the whole electricity. It's like unbelievable. It's like, how do you set something up like that?
Have you ever stayed at a place that was so bad you thought, oh, I've got to leave?
No, I've stayed in some places that I wouldn't stay. That I wouldn't stay again. That's not saying much, but yeah, a couple of places where you're like, this is not that's not good. That's a nail, sitting up in the carpet. Like I cut myself on that, or it's just not nice. It's just dank. Yeah. Funnily enough, there's one in the UK that we stayed at on the way out somewhere on the outskirts of London, but
it's called Brady's house.
That's right. It's just near you, actually. Well, apparently that's how Fawlty Towers came about, the TV show. Connie Booth and I've forgotten his name now. Silly me. Main character.
John Cleese.
John Cleese, of course. Was staying at a hotel and it was so awful they saw the comedic side of it and they were prompted to write the sitcom about it and play it up, which is a bit of a classic story.
You'd obviously have to keep it secret from the place that you were doing this. Like, you wouldn't want to ring up and say, hi, I want to do a podcast about how terrible your place is.
No.
Can I have a room for 2, please?
No, that's right. Would you tell the name of it? Would you reveal the name of it on the podcast?
This is a good question to which I do not know the answer.
It's just the same as doing TripAdvisor, although it's probably more impactful.
I think you could do it legally, of course. Yeah, I don't think it would be illegal. Be a bit risky. If you exaggerated and said things that weren't true, you could put yourself on dangerous ground. But also, I think, it could be a bit bullying to use the pulpit of a popular podcast, if it happened to be popular, to kind of put people out of business. But if you're doing honest, fair reviews, you could name them.
That's not the purpose, though, is it? The purpose of the podcast is for it to be entertaining and fun.
Yes.
So you could probably feel more relaxed about that and do it with, a greater spirit about it.
Exactly. I think you would have a bit more latitude to be funny if you didn't. I don't know. It's a good question.
Yeah.
I don't have the answer to it.
You could do it with restaurants too, but it's sort of about a meal.
Yes.
I did stay in a small hotel once in New York City, and I just remember them talking about the lice, like be careful with the, don't go barefoot on the floor. And so I was really, really conscious about that. But it was maybe more it was in my head. I've since stayed at a, much nicer place in New York, and you sort of feel more relaxed about it. But, you're in a big city and it's a really cheap place. Just for one night going through and you just...
And the people running it said, be careful of the lice in your room.
No.
Oh.
Just everyone gave me advice. They're saying if you're staying at a place that cheap, that's great, but just,
Oh, right.
just be careful.
How cheap was it?
Oh, it wasn't that cheap. It's probably more my imagination, come to think of it. Like it's...
You're just making it up.
That's right. It was actually, that was 5 stars and it was, I was just a bit more cautious.
1-star reviews.
1-star reviews, yeah, just for the experience. So it's a little bit like An Idiot Abroad or something like that. You're going out to do some...
Maybe. Yeah, I don't know. I'd like it to feel reviewy. I think it would be good. I think we should do it. I want to make one, mainly because I want to go and see if this place is as bad as my brother-in-law says.
Would you point out the good things as well, like give it a fair review, or would you just make a lot of tightly edited banter around the really bad stuff?
It depends if it's funny.
Yeah, I think that's probably it.
I would just want it to be a fun show to listen to.
Yeah.
I'd love people to start suggesting places where they've had nightmare stays as well and go to those places.
Yeah.
Like seek them out around the world.
It'd have to be funny because I don't think you don't want to listen to something about going to a bad place. You know what I mean? Like imagining it and it's awful unless you're laughing. You've got to be laughing. So,
yeah, of course, yeah. Yeah, you don't want to listen to someone like going through a terrible ordeal and like just like going through torment and unhappiness. Yeah, no, you're right. You'd have to be taking the mickey. Shall we do an idea from a patron?
Yeah.
Go to patreon.com/unmadefm if you would like to support our podcast. I think we're going to have a Patreon drive soon as well because we're trying to squirrel away a few extra dollars because we want to do this. Basically, we want to get together here in the UK and make some podcasts together in person. So that's what Patreon support will be used for. It's not going to be used just to, buy KFC.
Garth Brooks albums.
And more Garth Brooks albums. If you are supporting us, that is what you are contributing to. Some very special episodes that we hope to be bringing your way soon. And as a Patreon supporter, you can have potentially your idea read out on the show, as I am about to do now, let's go for Debbie. You want to hear from Debbie?
I do. Is Debbie from Canada?
No. Debbie is from the USA. She's currently studying, and it's while she's studying that she listens to Unmade. I don't know how someone can study and read stuff and listen to a podcast at the same time, but that's what she claims to do. She says herself, I don't know if that's productive or not. I'll have to see. But it's been a good way to keep my spirits up. She has a Jack Russell Terrier, uncreatively named Jack, and I miss him so much now while I'm in college. But whenever I see Audrey or Lulu, that's my dogs, on Brady's Snapchat, I get so excited, and she demands more videos of Lulu running. Here's Debbie's idea, Tim. She says, I'm not much good at creative ideas as evidenced by Jackie's name, but my idea for a podcast would be to describe a historically obscure object, or maybe just a random object, and the listeners would have to divine what it might be. It requires a bit of back and forth between the podcasters and the audience, but who knows, it could be fun. Anywho, thank you so much, Brady and Tim, for doing this podcast. I can't wait for more. Best, from Debbie.
Yay, thanks, Debbie. This is an interesting idea. It's a complex one to execute.
I think her idea falls into the same problem that your face idea falls into, in that you really need to see this object for it to work. So we're going to have to put that step in the process where the listener has to pause or something for a second and open up a web page and have a look at some pictures of the object. But other than that, I think it could be fun. It would be quite fun listening to the host sort of holding and handling some weird object, trying to figure out how it works themselves.
There's a little bit that goes on Antiques Roadshow about this. Antiques Roadshow is a show I know UK people will know what it is, and Australian people probably do too. And you can imagine from the title what it is, really. It's a show about antiques. But they pull out something, you go, what is that? And they talk about it for a while, and then you suddenly realise it was, used to peel carrots in the medieval era.
I do this. Do you ever go into antique stores and find some object and you have no idea what it is or what it's for or what it does, but you feel like you have to buy it?
Yeah. Well, you did this once when we were together.
Yeah?
I remember you buying something, we weren't sure what it was, and it looked cool. It was like a box with a speaker on it and a handle or something. It looked really cool.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think it was, I can vaguely picture it in my mind.
Was it in Australia or England?
No. This is in London. Yeah, I can't remember what it was. It was sort of semi-electronic.
Was it my pigeon racing clock?
Yes, it was. Yes.
I've got that right here. Hang on, I'll get it. I'll hold it. Hang on.
Are you holding it now?
I'm holding it now, Tim.
Oh, yes.
I can hear the little chain.
I can hear you holding it.
I'm going to open the catch. I'll be opening the box. And it's this big metal clock with levers on it.
What does it do?
It's used for pigeon racing, so I think it times the pigeons in pigeon races.
Wow, right. Okay.
Yeah, and for some reason it's got some weird design. I don't really understand. I still don't understand it, but I love the box.
Yeah.
I never really take the clock out, but I just leave it's got a great box.
Yeah, it looks cool. It looked cool.
I'll put a picture in the notes for the show if people want to have a look at it.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, there you go. See, Debbie? This idea is not insurmountable. We're surmounting it ourselves.
The pigeon racing clock would be great for we've given it away now, but it would be great for not knowing what it is, because it's a bizarre thing if you don't know what it is. I've also got a pigeon racing cage, like transport cage for pigeons that you put all your pigeons in when you're driving them around. And I've got that in my office as well, and that's what I used to store all my cables in. So each pigeon slot is for different cables.
Oh, wow, really? Do you take it on the road with you?
No.
Oh, okay.
If you saw what it looked like, you'd laugh.
All right.
It's like a big wicker wooden thing, yeah.
Okay.
I'll put a picture of that in the notes as well for people to look at.
Are there any other objects in your room, man, we should talk about?
Don't start me. I've got all sorts. I've got an old cannon shell that I keep coins in.
Oh, yeah?
Like an artillery shell. I better stop. This could get out of hand. You could make this just with stuff in my office.
Brady's
could make a whole podcast. Weird stuff that Brady's bought.
I think a few episodes in, it would start to lose energy. It's like, well, it does look a lot like a pen. Yep, it's a pen.
No, I've got cool stuff in my office. I reckon you could get 20 episodes out of just stuff in my office without and all of them would be like interesting things. Right now I'm looking at a packet of M&Ms from Air Force One with Barack Obama's signature on it.
No, that's great.
Things I've been sent by people and stuff. So I reckon I could sustain it. I've got a little glass case full of rocks I've brought back from interesting places all around the world, and
That's cool.
maybe it's just interesting to me.
They're not all mysterious. They're just cool objects in Brady's office.
A lot of them are mysterious. You wouldn't know what they are at first, or they've got more of a story to them than you realise.
Yeah.
Anyway, nice idea, Debbie. I'm going to give Debbie a 7 out of 10.
Well, that's better than 1 star.
Everybody, this episode has been brought to you by a new T-shirt that you can have to support the Unmade podcast.
Awesome.
This is something that Tim suggested. I think you basically suggested this after about 2 episodes. It was an idea you had. You've been pestering me about it since.
I have. I think this is a brilliant idea. I think everyone will want one of these. I want one of these. I love this.
So these are basically they're just Unmade podcast T-shirts. They'll put a link in the notes. How would you describe it, Tim?
They're region specific, which is pretty cool.
Yes, it's a chance to show your support for where you live. And they basically say Unmade in England or Unmade in Australia. I think it's cute. I think they're cute, and they're a fun way for us to raise funds for future episodes, because we've got some grand plans and things we want to do that's going to require us to raise some funds. And instead of just like giving us brown paper bags full of money, you can have a T-shirt in exchange for your support.
We'll see what happens with your presents. We could cash some of them in.
We could do that too. So anyway, all jokes aside and birthday presents aside, if you would like to check out these new Unmade podcast T-shirts, we will put a link in the description and see what you think. And I haven't made one for every country in the world yet, but if there's a country that is not represented, which is almost every country in the world, barring 4 or 5, you can get in touch, and if enough people from that country get in touch, then I guess we'll make one.
I hope we're doing a Canada one, are we?
Yes, I have done a Canada one, because we do seem to have a lot of Canadians.
That's awesome. I think it's a winning idea, as you've heard me say repeatedly.
Now we've done it, so we're going to finally find out whether you were right. When you said, I think people would like these, we are going to find out once and for all if you were right.
No, I'm looking forward to it. Anyway, get on it, people. We appreciate your support.
Are you going to get just the Australia one?
I will probably wear one from another country. I can't see myself. I probably will buy one from each country. I buy all of our T-shirts.
You're going to buy one from every country?
One from each country.
I'll just make hundreds and make a profit out of you.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I'll buy one from each country and I'll wear them. I like black T-shirts, and these are black. Are they going to be in other colours too, man, or are they just in black?
Because some of the writing's in white, I've found if you put them on other colours, it doesn't look as good. But I don't know yet. I don't know. I can only devote so much time to T-shirt design. I've got pigeon clocks to maintain.
No, anyway, sorry, that's a boring story. Cut that out.